Before we started last month, we said we were going to approve you've already approved the budget for PD, but now that you've heard the
All right.
improvement plans and you've approved those, that motion there, in the second paragraph is really what we're looking at. Approve the 15-16 district professional development plan.
Yeah, so the document there on page 68 kind of ties together the school improvement plans that we've been hearing in the last two meetings and our professional development plan, which is led by, you see the list of members of the district professional development committee. There's one representative from each campus that meets to help lead the professional development efforts across the district. As Dr. Zalis mentioned, the budget is listed there on to page 4, going back. Demonstrates an expenditure of $180,100, covering a multitude of PD events throughout the district through the year, and that does represent an increase of around $16,000 from last year. So even then, when I talked with the PD committee, we had a meeting this week. Most of the dollars are spoken for in the buildings already. So we try to keep that a healthy part of our district. Like I said, it does go toward meeting the goals that you've heard the schools present the last two meetings for our school improvement plan. So we would ask that you give formal approval of this document that ties all of that together as our district's PD plan.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a second? A motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hounson. And I guess you're going to also talk to us about the APR.
I am. Beginning on page 76 of your packet is a summary of the scores and then all the supporting data that goes into our APR, which APR stands for our Annual Performance Report. This report is a little later this year than it has been in the past due to the new test being given. There was a delay in calculating these. I normally have this for you at about the same time that we do all the assessment presentations in September. But in September, we only had the assessment stuff, so we have done that part. Tonight, we'll look at the APR. Just a little bit defining this. This is our single point of accountability for the school district. It's put out by DESE. It takes a look at 3 years of data and average it together. 3 years, the old system was 5, now 3. We do find that these scores are a little more volatile from year to year because of data coming on and dropping off. But it does take a look at 3 years. It calculates based on the MAP Performance Index, which will be abbreviated MPI throughout this, which we've talked about those scores. It does represent increased expectations for our performance from the past evaluation system. I do want to mention the accredited with distinction in performance. I get asked about that some. With the implementation of this plan, they did define distinction in performance as scoring 90% or higher, plus meeting a set of other criteria as defined by the state board. Just in the 3 years, we haven't got around to setting those other criteria as defined by the state board. So distinction in performance doesn't exist to this point. You'll see our percent does hit it, but whatever other factors they set. So unfortunately, I can't tell you that we've received that again, but
nobody can.
No one can.
Yeah.
So we do have a full district report and building level reports, and as you heard, a lot of this is used in our school improvement planning. Now, the pages that you have in your document represent all the information that we go through. This plan is a little complex. I did bring with me the help guide. Now it's 110 pages long to explain this. I thought if we could get through the first 80 tonight, the last 30 are mostly definitions and appendices. So I think we'll be okay.
All right, let's go.
I think we're good. All right. The APR scoring guide, there are 5 goals set in the MSIP 5 process. We will take a look at all 5. You can see the point value assigned to each. By far the largest is academic achievement, which accounts for 56, actually 70 points when you add the first 2 goals together out of the total of 140 that are possible. And we will take a look at all 5. The first one, Standard 1, Academic Achievement. You see lots of abbreviations, MPI and NCE up there. The MPI are the MAP Performance Index, which I've spoken with you about before, and we have in each subject area our MAP Performance Index for the past 3 years. In the APR, it averages those 3 years together to get an average, which is our status score. The average of those 3 years is placed on a chart, and we receive points basically for at what level our scores fall in our status. The highest status is the 2020 target, and it goes down to on track, approaching, and floor. And I'll give you an idea about how we score in each one as we look at the points on the next level. So the MPI is used to measure our status level. The NCE, you see an ELA NCE and a math NCE up there. That stands for Normal Curve Equivalency. That is a new measure that has never been on the APR before this year. They added this in this year. And the reason it's there is because of the new tests that we took. The new test was not comparable to the old test. And so just using the indexes as a straight average, they didn't feel was the proper way to do it, excuse me, when looking at schools making progress and getting better. That was an invalid measure. So they've reintroduced, for those of you who have been around to the previous cycle of the APR, this is a comparison number again. This is a number that compares our performance as compared to other school districts in the state of Missouri. If we were at 50, that would mean we're scoring at the state average. So we want to see NCEs above 50, and the more above 50 it is, the better it is. So you can see those normal curve equivalencies is a relative measure for our performance as compared to the state average. What's interesting is if you look at the math line, you can see that our MPI dropped from 2014 to 2015 with the introduction of the new test. However, our performance as compared to the state actually went up. So while you see a reduction in score of how we actually did in comparison to the rest of the state, the gap widened some. These scores are used to give us points for progress, which means we're getting better from year to year to year, hopefully that we're seeing improvement. Okay, so the MPI is for status, the NCE is for progress. Now, the new test, we didn't have new standards in science and social studies, so they didn't do an NCE in those two subject levels. Okay? Now, what those scores represent in English language arts, our status measure put us in the on-track category, which is in level 3 of 4. We also earned points for individual student growth. Okay, progress and growth sound the same and they're similar. Progress looks at the total performance of your entire group. Growth looks at student by student, our kids growing at the rate that they should. So we did earn points for both progress and growth and earned all 16 points that we could earn in English language arts. In math, because of the change in the indexes, we scored in the approaching category. We also earned points for growth. We earned 15 out of 16 total points on this year's APR. You might see in our score report, it reports 16. Part of that is because of the new test, there was a hold harmless provision put in for this year, meaning that if you did see a reduction in score, you could hang on to last year's scores instead, again, for fear of the new test. We did receive 1 extra point there. I will tell you that I was very happy to see that we did not rely on the hold harmless to keep our scores up across the board. We received 1 out of the 56 points for the hold harmless, but everything else was based on this year's performance, which was good to see. In science, we are well above the minimum 2020 target in our performance and status, so we earn all 16 points for our status measure. In social studies, we are on track simply because of 3 years ago, a transition in our testing left us a low mark. Our scores are well above the 2020 target. in social studies, but we earned on track plus progress and earned all 8 points in social studies. So altogether, in the academic achievement goal, we did earn 56 out of 56 points in that, on that first goal. Questions on the academic achievement goal? There's a whole lot of numbers there in your packet and everything, and that is about 80 of the 110 pages in the help guide is just that page right there. Standard 2 is academic achievement, but of particular students. This is for subgroup achievement. This is for the 5 historically lower performing subgroups in the state of Missouri. This represents the scores for black students, Hispanic students, low-income students, IEP students, and ELL students, or students that are not native English speakers. These numbers are the same thing that you looked at on the previous page, or the same types of numbers, but these are the scores for just kids who fit anywhere within one of those 5 subgroups. You might notice we have an NA for the social studies down there. The only social studies test that goes into this measurement is the U.S. government test. It's a single test at a single grade level. If you don't have 30 subgroup members show up for data, then they don't post data there because it's almost personally identifiable information once you go below a certain threshold. So we do receive points, but they don't post any of our data. For Standard 2 in English Language Arts, we scored at the on-track level for our status for our 3-year average of our MAP Performance Index, which is worth 3 out of 4 points. In math, we scored at the approaching level plus earned progress for improving over that 3-year sequence, earning 3 out of 4 points. In science, the subgroup members scored at the 2020 target level, which is the top achievement level. So we received all 4 points in science. And in social studies, we were at the on-track level plus earning progress for improvement, earned 2 out of 2 points for the social studies subcategory. So for goal 2, subgroup achievement, we earned 12 out of the 14 possible points in that area. That's a mixture of status and growth over time. Standard 3 is broken into 3 10-point goals. 3.1 through 3.3 has to do with our students' performance on the ACT test, SAT, and ASVAB. There are a few other tests possible in there, but for us, those are the ones that affect us. We earned 8 out of 10 points in that category. I will tell you that 2 years ago, this does not include the scores for our juniors that took the ACT this past year. We receive credit for these scores when they graduate, the year that they graduate. So we'll receive credit for those kids next year when they graduate. Those scores will go in. They are also the first group that we started doing ASVAB, full grade ASVAB testing with. So those scores will hit next year, our APR as well. Those will be added in. So I would hope to see that jump up to 10 out of 10 next year with that number of scores going into that category. 3.4 deals with our students' performance in advanced placement classes, dual credit classes. TSA are the end of course tests for RTI and RTC courses, the official industry recognized credentials, the IRCs that you heard him mention, and the Project Lead the Way courses. And we scored a 10 out of 10 in that category. We were at the 2020 target of that level. The final point, goal in this standard is college and career placement, and this does go to the placement that RTI and RTC were talking about you. Kids that finish career technical programs, are they moving on to find employment in the area that they're trained in, or going to college, or going to the military, any of those categories. And in that, we earned 9.5 out of 10 points, which is very strong. So a total for Standard 3 is 27.5 out of 30. And I'll show you our historical performance in that here in just a bit. Standard 4 is student attendance. This is the goal that we want 90% of kids to attend 90% of the time. For Rolla for us last year and for a 3-year average both, we have 91.2% of our kids doing that. So we're at the 2020 target and earn the full 10 points.
Good.
Standard 5 is the graduation rate for this. They look at our 4-year rate, our 5-year rate, our 6-year rate, and our 7-year rates, and determine how we're doing in all of those. I believe this year, excuse me, our strongest was our 6-year rate and our 7-year rate, that we were on track plus progress, and were able to earn all 30 points for, excuse me, our graduation rate. So, a summary of our scores. Here I've got the 5 goals and the points possible listed in the first column, and then the points that we've earned over the past 3 years. This system hasn't been in place for 3 years. It was built to handle 3 years worth of data, so we now have a full 3 years under our belt with this new system. You see, in 2013, we were at 134.5 for 96.1%. 2014, we were at 124.5 with a drop in the Standard 3. Was kind of the largest drop, and also a drop in Standard 1 academic achievement for 88.9%. This year's totals bring it back up to 135.5 out of 140.
Wow.
Which is a score of 96.8%, which we were very pleased to see. You can see how those scores have varied a little bit over the years, but we've been fairly consistent. We've done a lot to try and address the standards within Goal 3, and we're seeing the benefits of that, and we should continue to see that.
Great.
For the building level, just real quick, you can see each building has a different number of points possible. Obviously, the elementaries don't have graduation rate and career placement scores. So the points possible, the points earned, you can see that all buildings are at 95% or higher on their individual building APR scores, again, which we were very pleased to see as well.
Wow.
So consistent performance across the entire district.
Very good.
That's really,
Wow. Great.
And that's our district APR. I'd be happy to answer any questions about anything in your packet or on the presentation.
Bless your heart.
I love this. No, honestly,
that's your thing right there,
I'm
isn't it?
perfectly comfortable looking at them. This is great. I'm very happy.
Looks
That's
good.
fantastic.
Oh, those are great
Pass
numbers.
on the thanks to the staff and teachers and students. They're great numbers.
You heard a lot of things tie in. You heard a few buildings mention APR and earning points. It's not, again, it's not the focus, but it's part of
outcome.
looking to improve and
Yeah.
strengthening our programs and giving kids better opportunities.
Then we reflect our kids, and that's what we're about.
Good.
Any other questions or comments for that? Discussion on MSBA regional meeting, once we got there. Any comments?